Okay, so this is the presentation on my animation fixer pitch. So, what's the objective? The objective is to create a system that allows for cutscenes to be altered in real time to fit new contexts. This would be done in Engine rather than having to redo animations outside of Engine and re-export them. And what you'd want to do with this kind of thing is, say you make an animation where you walk up some stairs and the character grabs some coffee. At any point during production, the director might come up and say, actually, these stairs are steeper now, and the coffee cup's on the other side. So, what this system would be able to do is, the stairs are higher. Okay, so we're going to calculate and reposition the leg on top of the steps so that it's not clipping through. The coffee cup's on this side. Let's disable this arm and use the other arm to grab it. Sorry, let's just use the other arm to grab it, because we just put a point of interest on it. So Unreal is being used for increasingly more cinematic purposes. For example, VFX and rendering. So I think that it's important that if we're going to keep making game engines more cinematic, that the animators behind those cinematics get a piece of the innovation pie, per se. So, for example, the applications for this, it would allow for, obviously, the actors to interact with scene elements in more directive ways. You always see this with Lara Croft in the newer Tomb Raider games, where you'll be going through a cave and then she'll like duck underneath the cave in this, a sliding against the wall animation. Then later in the game, you'll find some wooden beams at exactly the same height, and then she'll play the same animation to get through them. And then you'll see it again in a different context, where the scene is being used to fit the animation and not the other way around. Using procedural fixing of animations would allow it to fit the scene rather than having the scene fit the animation. It would also allow for just general alterations to cutscenes. For example, let's say the hand goes right in front of the camera. You could just say, actually, the point of interest right now, off to the side. Now it's no longer in front of the camera, and it's like a 5 minute process rather than having to go in, reanimate the arm, export it again in Engine. Did it work this time? Maybe. You get to see the results there and then. And then because the turnaround is done in less time and, fixing things is a cheaper process because it would be quicker due to the system, it would let creatives and directors have more fun making scenes because overall the scenes could be done with less commitment and therefore less budget into them, so more dynamic and insane shots can be made with more experimentation for less time. So I got into the preliminary research. Is this worth doing? So I looked into the games industry, and all of the big games that you see are getting bigger and bigger budgets. And those bigger and bigger budget games are always more cinematic by the year. So there's a whole focus on cinematography to make games look more like movies. For more examples, because you've got the God of War here, you've got The Last of Us, or where the cutscenes are all extremely actor driven, it's just like watching a TV show or a movie. You've also got stuff like Spider Man 2, where they build up the set to make the motion capture fit the scene more accurately so they can get better motion capture data and therefore better more cinematic shots. And the same for Horizon Forbidden West. All the games are doing this. And now the problem is, with my own knowledge, I know what that process looks like. You have to get the motion capture actor in, you have to clean it up in Motion Builder, you have to put it in Unreal. Then, actually, we're not happy with this. You gotta go back to Motion Builder, alter it, take it back to Unreal. Actually, the scene's entirely changed. We have to rebook in the motion capture actors, take it back from Shogun Live, put it in Motion Builder, put it in Unreal, fix it in Motion Builder again if nobody's happy with it, put it back in Unreal, and it's this big process where it's super time consuming and it's super just cost consuming in general. So having a system that's able to streamline this development without having to go in and just keep having to go on this long iterative journey on minor issues, that would be great. So that would have an impact on the industry. And I looked at the industry again. What kind of solutions already exist? And I saw Hellblade, I saw Street Fighter 6, where they have live performance capture, where you can see the animations already in the game and in the scene and already rendered. And that's great. That's sure to save time. The director is there. They get to make the micro adjustments right there in the scene, exactly how it would look. And therefore, you can get a more accurate, more pleasing shot there and then in one session. Unfortunately, if things change, you still have to go in and get your expensive equipment, rebook your motion capture actor, pull them in to redo a cutscene, and it's still the case of we need to go into Motion Builder, put it in Real, go to Motion Builder, back to Shogun. It's the same process. So it's still, it's worth doing just for the case of speeding that up. You go into film and TV, and they're getting more focused on game engines as well. Mainly Disney for real-time rendering and VFX, but also like Westworld for helping make their CGI and live action pieces merge together better. They are all switching from traditional pipelines to virtual Unreal pipelines. So why not help them by having the pipeline also extend to the animators making the cinematics? It could easily be implemented if they're already using Unreal for this kind of thing. So, for example, because the way that it works is it would be able to procedurally make the walking and procedurally make the arms move, you could just throw in a background actor, put the system on it, and move the actor forward, and it would walk, and you wouldn't have to worry about it clipping through the floor, and you wouldn't have to worry about animating it. So it speeds up production time immeasurably because they're just background characters. You don't need to do much cleanup on those guys. And then scene previs can look way better, and you can get a better idea of what you want to the animator during previs phase by using the simple tools presented in the animation fixer to give a better look at what you're looking for as a director. And then obviously post-production is a fixer. It fixes the animation up if you don't like what you've got already. So it already applies to film and TV. So how do I go about this? And the first thing I had to look at, because this is the main goal of this, I need to understand Unreal Engine's control rig better. So I went to look at the GDC talk given by Epic themselves, because who's going to know more about Epic systems than Epic Games themselves? So I looked into what they did for LEGO Fortnite. And you see on the left there's the slope warping control rig during runtime, where the animation is just a walking forward animation. But thanks to this, if you go up the slope, the animation will adjust to it. If it needs to look somewhere else, the animation will adjust to it. You don't need to go in there and make up slope 1, down slope 1, look left, look right as separate animations. And it's the same for the animation sets for LEGO characters. They're all based on one control rig. You make one animation and it works for all of them. So the control rig is already starting to be used in pipelines to make animators' jobs easier. I also looked into just cool things that they did. So this full body dragon, there's no animation on this guy. It's all maths and it's all procedural generation through control rig. So the legs, they're moving procedurally. The pelvis is moving procedurally. The tongue, the wings, they're all like physics assets. And then the tail, all the overlapping action is done in control rig. So it's very clearly that you can do a lot with control rig while having very little. So because Unreal and Epic are way above what I can do within the time I've got, I looked into smaller projects done by smaller creators. So I found this procedural walking spider tutorial, which would help me, make the legs move. And then I looked into this hand-eye tutorial, where he's able to overlay this hand-eye so it rests on the wall over the idle animation. So where the animation is, that's just an idle animation. Now it's holding onto a wall because it's been calculated to do so. They've calculated where the wall is, and that's where the hand should go. Then I also looked into the one on the right, where they alterate this punch animation to target different places, which is exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm looking at this. It seems like my project is completely and utterly possible given what is already been done with Control Rig. So I broke it down into 3 things: procedural walking, procedural arm movement, and procedural body movement. For procedural walking, my apologies, that says arm movement. For procedural walking, I just need to make a system that considers the height of the legs during the walk, how the legs are affecting the pelvis, and a different direction and speed of the actor. So to do that, I need to look into the basic IK system of Control Rig, which is essentially what it does. It drives the arm through motion on the wrist. So if you pull the hand back, You don't need to do that through the elbow, you do that through the wrist, and the elbow will calculate where it needs to go via a pull vector. I need to understand how to implement that on a control rig. And then I have to figure out how to alter the height of the pelvis procedurally during the walk. Such as, while you're walking, you've got the animator's guide up there, up and down while they're walking, or if they go up a step, I need to know how to make the pelvis move upwards so that they're not clipping through the floor. I also, because it's an actor, it's not a character, so therefore I can't use Unreal's velocity and character movement. I'm going to have to calculate velocity myself, which shouldn't be too hard, because it is just distance over time, but it's the case of I need to be able to convert that into control rig, which is something I don't know how to do yet. So I'd have to look into it, and then looking at the technical research for the arm movement. Obviously, it's just moving the arm around. You'd be able to, obviously, when the arm you don't want is, for example, if we changed what arms we're using for punch, you don't want to use the right arm anymore, it would still punch. Needs to have an organic way of just disabling the arm and leaving it to the side. It should be able to be turned off and on via a whim, so you're not constantly aiming towards the point of interest as the character's walking around. You should be able to turn it off. So you can just turn it on, grab the thing, turn it off again, and now we've got the thing. So essentially, to do all of this, and obviously target POIs, I just need to look into IK systems within Animation Blueprint, because the way that they do them is different, and then I need to also figure out how am I going to essentially create the system that makes the arms default positions. I could probably use a different point of interest for this, so I'll have to look into that. And then the integration of the blueprint in Unreal Sequencer. What I mean by that is I'm going to need to figure out how to make blueprints via Sequencer, so that way you don't need to press buttons while the cutscene's happening, so it can all be automated, and therefore it fixes it properly and it's not obtuse. And then also needs to have communication. Obviously, it needs to communicate between the blueprint and the control rig and the animation blueprint to feed variables between each other and figure out what we're doing and how to get the point of interest, and essentially just making them communicate with each other. And then procedural body adjustment isn't much. I just need to know how to change where the body is moving based on what arm is moving outward. So, if you hold your arm out, you'll see that your chest moves to the moves so that your arm can get more reach. I need to be able to do that with the control rig. It's that simple. So it'd probably be a lot of looking into animation blueprint and then figuring out how to alter the bones while the arm is moving. Essentially, that's what I'm looking at here. As well as the head bone. How do I get that to look at where it needs to look at so it can look more natural when you're grabbing things like door handles? So went through the Moscow. Essentially, to summarize, I need to be able to alter animations mid cutscene, which is the whole point of the project. I need to have a scene in order to make that work, so it can't just be a flat surface. I need to have steps, or I need to have a ramp, or I need to have something the character needs to touch as they're walking through. Stuff like that, so I can show off the customization. And also I need to be able to have that scene I can move it around during runtime and see how it affects the walkers, how it affects the actors rather. And then the could have showing up different characters using the same control rig would be nice. And then scene randomizer so it can really get the procedural aspects of all this, and essentially just randomizing it just so I can show off more situations. So I got into the sprints. I needed to prove the project was possible. So what I did was I got a walk. This is my first demo. Got a walk. Then I got a jumping animation, made it an additive, and then through Animation Blueprint and Blueprint itself, use Sequencer to turn it on and turn it off. So that's what you're seeing now, where he starts crouching in the air. That's a jump being overlaid. So altering the animation during runtime is possible. That's what I found out with my experiment there. So then I looked into dynamic arm fixing, so I had to learn how to make body IKs using the control rig system so I can get used to it. So I did the full body, which doesn't look great, so then I put in the work to figure out how to do the advanced version with the basic IK that looks a lot better. And I used that essentially to make the arm move towards a POI, which is controlled by Sequencer, where it moves around and then it can sequence to the next POI in a scene, so you don't have to just keep using one. Which, like I say, that's all done through Blueprint and Animation Blueprint and Sprint 3. I figured out how to make procedural walking in the first demo, where it looks a bit janky and there's no flourishes to it, but he sure as heck walks upstairs, and walks downstairs and his legs are carrying himself forward and backward. So I'd consider that a success. So, and that's all done via control rig, through doing like using curves and using essentially calculating the velocity and stuff like that. What comes next? What comes next is I need to, obviously combine the systems together so that I can, grab things and walk at the same time. Then make the tech demo just to show off what it can do. And then obviously make sure it all works in the sequencer. And then keep going and make scenes for all of this to work within, as well as bug fixing and polishing. So, thank you for listening to the presentation on my animation fixer. I hope you enjoyed listening to it.